Three. Welcome to this week's Kindness Cafe podcast. Grab a cup of coffee, tea, or your favorite snack, relax, and join us for another uplifting story. I am Seema Raj, your host. April is National Autism Awareness Month, and the CDC reported in 2021 that approximately 1 in 44 children in the United States are diagnosed with autism every year. Facts show that autism is a genetic condition and there is no cure. Boys are 4 times more likely to have autism than girls. Autism can be diagnosed as early as age 2, but more likely after the age of 4. These are just a few facts about autism, but now let's welcome my guest today, Brittany Rader, the President of Clinical Services for Behavioral Framework, to find out exactly what autism is and how you can detect the signs early on. Hi, Brittany. Thank you so much for joining us on Kindness Cafe today. Can you tell us exactly what you do at Behavioral Framework?
Hi, Seema. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be able to talk about this topic with you. So my role at Behavioral Framework, I am President of Clinical Services. I'm a board-certified behavior analyst by training, and I oversee all of our therapy services at the company.
Wow, that is wonderful. So, a lot of experience with this topic. So, can you tell me, a lot of people, they know what autism is, but we really honestly just don't hear about it as much as we hear about other things. Can you tell us exactly what autism is?
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's not going to be a clear answer. It's a complex neurological and developmental disorder, and it affects how someone communicates, interacts, learns, and behaves.
So clearly, a person who has autism will probably stand out amongst others in their own age group by the way they behave. So, what does autism look like? Like, if I were to see a child in a classroom environment, or maybe even from a parent's perspective at home, what is it going to look like?
That's a great question. So, someone diagnosed with autism, you may see difficulties or differences in their social interaction, how they communicate, how they behave. A good example is one individual with autism may have deficits in how they communicate their basic wants and needs, and another individual may have very, very advanced communication skills for their specific age. An individual with autism may have difficulty or lack of interest in engaging in simple social interactions like greetings. You may find someone diagnosed with autism prefers a very specific way of doing things or may get frustrated when things don't go a particular way. Transitions can be difficult, change can be difficult. And another really common feature in individuals with autism are what we call stereotypic behaviors. And these can vary greatly, but some of those common things are things that I think we actually hear more about, such as hand flapping or pacing.
Interesting. And what age does autism normally show up in a child, usually?
So most often, if autism is present, it's diagnosed by the age of 3. Autism now is being diagnosed as early as 18 months. That's because doctors have done a great job at modifying their screening tools and catching it earlier. There are times where autism may not be diagnosed until later in life, but that's not as common.
Yeah, and I also understand that there are many variations of autism. Each individual is different. What is the autism spectrum? And can you explain exactly what that is to us?
Yeah, so autism is known as a spectrum disorder because of the variation. So that means from one person to another, the type and severity of symptoms are going to vary greatly just based on that individual person.
And it's really hard because autism is not diagnosed through a blood test or other medical exams. So, what are these variations of behavior on the spectrum that parents should look out for?
It's another really great question. So first of all, I think it's really important to remember that symptoms across individuals are never going to be the same. So you can't look at one individual with autism and try to identify if your child is exhibiting the same symptoms. But I think it's also really tricky to identify the more subtle signs of autism at a young age, especially when you've got an 18-month-old. But some of the signs that I think are very easy for parents to look for are things like, does your child make eye contact or respond to their name? Are they pointing at things to show or share interest? Can they communicate with you? Recently, the developmental milestones for communication changed, but I would say a good indicator is by 15 months, your child should have some single words that they're using consistently to get their needs met. I think another really important sign to look at is your child's behavior. So you may see hand flapping or toe walking that happens very often. And I think the most important thing for parents to look at, because a lot of our younger kids can do things that just seem weird. Most typical kids do. But I think that the one main thing to look for is, are those behaviors hard to interrupt? Do you see these intense interests or focus when they are doing these things? If you're watching your child play with a toy, are they playing with parts of a toy instead of the entire toy is designed? Those are all really, really good signs for parents to look for.
Wow, very, very good information, Brittany. And so I'm just thinking here as we're talking. So if the firstborn has autism, how likely is it that the second child will have autism? None or more chances? How does that work?
That's a great question. I don't know the research off the top of my head, but I can tell you from experience, I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of individuals, and there can be families of 5 and only one individual has autism. There can be twins and both individuals have autism. There could be twins and one individual has autism. So I don't have a good answer for you there, but I will say I think it just ties into, it's going to vary and it's a severity of symptoms.
Okay. So if a parent does see some of these signs of autism, what should their first plan of action be?
I think my best advice for parents is always trust your instincts. You always are going to know if something is signaling to you that something may not be right in your child. I think if they have any sort of suspicion, just follow up with their doctor immediately. They're going to be their best point of contact and guidance and support to let them know what they should do next, and also help them figure out if something really is going on.
Yeah, and I did read somewhere that, of course, there is no cure for autism, but once you are on that spectrum and you are identified, where you are on that spectrum, can it get worse with age or does it stay where it is?
It's going to depend. What I can say is symptoms will not improve and they may worsen if you don't have the proper intervention.
Okay. Yep. So my next question is, how is autism treated?
Yeah, so autism is best treated with behavior intervention, and the most effective and evidence based treatment for autism is applied behavior analysis therapy. I think it's really difficult because there's a lot of different things floating around, just like any disability or diagnosis. You kind of people start to come up with their own treatments and treatment approaches, but it's important for families to remember applied behavior analysis therapy is the only evidence based approach that demonstrates success in individuals with autism. It's not going to always be the only approach. It may be coupled with other therapies like speech therapy or occupational therapy, or even medication management.
Okay, so a lot of good options actually. And like any other psychological or medical issue, of course, early detection is the key to getting your child or anybody that you know on the right path. So if a person does get diagnosed with, early on and gets the proper therapy or medications, can an autistic person lead a normal, healthy lifestyle?
I think everyone's definition of normal is so different. And so the short answer is yes. If that's your new normal, then yes, an individual with autism can lead a normal, healthy lifestyle. But I think it's going to vary based on the type and severity of the individual symptoms. Some of those people that are severely impacted, it may be difficult for them to live independently or have their own job. But I think the most important thing to remember is the sooner you can begin intervention once you're diagnosed, the greater the outcomes for that individual.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. And so, Brittany, April being Autism Awareness Month, what kind of activities are going on for someone who's interested in supporting this cause? And also, if someone wants to donate money or just their time, who do they contact and how do they get started?
I think Autism Speaks is a great website. It's a national organization. It's going to give you lots of resources and ways to donate or ways to become involved or raise awareness. Locally, if you live in Maryland or Virginia, we have organizations like Pathfinders for Autism, which is also another nonprofit that has some local activities and resources for people to become a part of.
Wonderful, great information for people out there who are interested. And I also know that the autism campaign Light It Up Blue aims to get an understanding and acceptance for those with autism. I've seen people out there wearing the color blue. So the color blue represents calmness in an otherwise loud and maybe busy world. Is that right? When I think of blue, I think of the ocean, the waves. I can see how that can be calming. Is that right?
Absolutely. I think the blue is also tied to, individuals with autism can have a lot of sensory needs, hypersensitivities, hyposensitivities. And so the blue is kind of this calming, grounding symbol. And I also think, everybody can interpret these things the way they like to, but I also believe that the blue is also a good, solid color for families and them just learning to be calm and navigate living with an individual diagnosed with autism, because the more calm they are, the better the outcomes and better ways they'll be able to work and interact and engage with their child.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know a lot of these things depend on family involvement. So I think most people, they're so aware of their child's, activities and seeing them how they play on the playground or in school activities or talking to their teachers. So I think, the signs that you did mention are pretty clear. So, good luck to all those families out there. And so if you had the best message you can give to our listeners in case they are dealing with someone who is autistic, what would that be?
Take a deep breath, talk to your child's doctor, get support. No one is defined by their diagnosis, and I think the more information and resources that families have for themselves and their child, the better the outcomes for their child.
Absolutely. Great message, Brittany. Let's all take a deep breath because I know these things are definitely not easy, especially for parents whose child is diagnosed with autism. But, people need to remember these kids are very intelligent, they're very creative, and they can live independently as an adult. So if anyone out there suspects any signs that are out of the norm, be proactive. Find a supportive team of health professionals to help you and your child navigate this journey so your child can get on the road to leading a normal, healthy, and most of all, happy life. And I just read, which is good news, that a certain pharmaceutical company is already testing a new medication for the core symptoms of autism spectrum disorder. So the future here is already looking brighter. I was really, really happy to find that. And in the meantime, I would suggest when autism speaks, we definitely must listen. Thank you so much, Brittany, for joining me today on Kindness Cafe and sharing key information that will help someone out there. What you are doing is definitely a kindness journey.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course, and with that, I want to thank all of our listeners for joining us today. Join us next time for another inspirational journey. Until then, stay safe, healthy, and remember, living is giving.